Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As, so let me get my hat on, and let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. If someone runs a 12-week periodized program, wherever it's your off-season intermediate program or another program, and he gets sick in the middle of the program, where does he go from there? When you're in the middle of the cycle, it's expected that you made some progress, but if you get sick, you won't be able to do the prescribed reps with the given percentages. Let's say someone runs your off-season intermediate program and he gets sick for a week on week 7. How does he continue to program when he gets back from sickness? I almost feel like the whole cycle is screwed if that happens. Alright, yeah, absolutely, the whole cycle is screwed if that happens. A big part of this, guys, if you're training seriously, like, okay, let me be frank with this. People don't generally get that sick who are very healthy and athletic. It doesn't happen often, so it really shouldn't be a big issue. Now, the question I would ask, something like a true periodized program like that assumes, like a serious one, like my intermediate all-season program, this assumes you're in really good health, you have a great diet, you get plenty of sleep, you should have a thriving immune system. You shouldn't get sick very often. Like, the odds of this happening, you're probably at worst going to get sick once a year long enough for it to be a problem. Maybe. So even out of 4 different cycles of running a 12-week program like that, you might have 1 cycle per year that gets messed up. If you're getting sick more often than that, it might be time to step back and assess your lifestyle. And if you're not having a healthy enough lifestyle to where this is really a problem, like you're getting the flu or something twice a year, again, time to step back and say, what am I doing wrong with my life? Is your diet bad? Are you cutting way too lean? What are you doing that's causing your immune system to be compromised enough to where you're getting really sick 2 or 3 times a year? And we all have this happen. I mean, I've got food poisoning before. Last year I got food poisoning. Actually, it's happened to me twice since I've been on YouTube. It can be a problem. So what do you do when you get messed up for a full week in the middle of a training cycle like this? Alright, you step back and restart the phase. You need to assume that if you had to take a week off from training, you need a light week to start over again, and then you restart the cycle. So let's say you're on week 7 of a program, so you've got weeks 1 through 3 are a block, weeks 4 through 6 are a block, and then weeks 7 through 9 are a block. You got to week 7, got sick. What I would do is step back after that, assume basically 2 weeks of loss. Alright, so your 14-week or your 12-week program, your 12-week cycle of periodization will turn into a 14-week. You need to step back. Obviously, you didn't train that week. If you're sick, if you've got the flu, you got food poisoning, and you go to the gym, you're probably too stupid to work out. You need to probably find something simpler to do with your life than lifting weights. You know, it's not going to work. You're just not smart enough to lift weights. Unfortunately, which sounds hilarious because, you know, a lot of stupid people do it, but someone who would go to the gym and train in those conditions, they're pretty stupid. Just don't reproduce. But that being said, what should they do? You take a week off from training. You take a week off from training. When you get back, you're going to need an adjustment week. You're going to need an entire adjustment week. So come in, repeat what would normally be week 7, but with 10% less weight. You're going to have almost, not quite a deload week, but a minor week just to regain motor patterns you lost, re-get all your transient storage factors back because you've probably lost intermuscular glucose, things like that. You need a week to retrain all those things. So come in and do what would have been week 7, because again, that's the start of the cycle. So you're going to need to restart whatever the cycle is. Well, in this case, since you were right at the start of a new cycle and a 3-week periodization, you're okay. It's not that bad. So come in and do it 10% lighter than you would have. Then the following week, you're going to do week 7 the way that you're supposed to do it and go right back into the training. It's pretty simple. You know, this is the way you got to do things, because these things do happen. They do happen. People get sick, they get food poisoning, they get problems like that. And that's how you address it. You address it and move on. Alright, next question. Hi Jason, I was wondering what are the best ab core exercises for deadlift and squat carryover. I'm currently running a powerlifting program, upper-lower split. The program I'm running says you can do additional ab work unless it's before the lower day. Also, how much sets and reps would be ideal for these ab exercises? All right, brother, a lot of people are going to tell you the squat and deadlift are your exercises. Do you really need core exercises with all these things? I don't know. It depends on the person. I would say that you can probably never have a core that's too strong. But if you're doing any sort of serious athletic training program, you're probably squatting, you're probably deadlifting, you're probably doing standing presses. You're doing all sorts of stuff that are major core building exercises because they're full body exercises. What I would recommend for carryover for this, if you feel like your core is a weak link, and you know what, for many people the core is a weak link on the squat. Let's be realistic here. If it wasn't, people wouldn't be wearing belts. If the core wasn't a weak link on most people's squats, people wouldn't get 20, 30 pounds on their squat out of a belt either. Some people get 50 pounds out of a belt because they have an absurdly weak core. So it's a problem. The best thing you could do would be the ones that give you the best specificity of training. If you want to add additional core work, think about it this way. Do you need your core to be able to engage when you're laying down or when you're standing up when you're squatting and deadlifting? You need to be able to engage when you're standing up on your feet. I recommend doing standing work, standing up work, with either a cable or with a band. You can do it at a cable station using those rope attachments. You can stand and do crunches, or you can get bands and do it. I think bands are a little more aggressive, but I think they work better. So how many reps and sets? Do one set. You're doing this as an accessory movement to build a stronger core on exercises that already engage the core tremendously. You don't need to be coming in doing multiple sets. People who are on a proper training program shouldn't need to come in and do 3 or 4 sets for their core. One good set of something between 15 and 30 reps will probably sort you out. Probably sort you out. Now, if you want to go really heavy and you're really trying to hypertrophy your core more, you could do something like 3 sets of 8. But I think for most people, one set in around the 20 rep range, like I say, it could be 15, it could be 30, it doesn't matter. Depends on what resistance you have available. One good set after your workout is fine. So you're talking about doing it on off days. Why would you do that on your off days? Why wouldn't you do it on your squat and deadlift days? Do it after the exercises. Right, your core is already fatigued from those exercises. You want to add more workload to it. You want to strengthen it. You want to hypertrophy it. Do it after your squats and deadlifts in the same sessions. Not a problem. All right, next question. Given you recommend hitting body parts 2 times a week, how do you feel about alternating exercises such as one leg workout as squats, next front squats, and so on? Deadlift, straight leg deadlift, flat bench, incline. How do you feel about this? Setting up for injury or death? Dead on good strategy. Sorry, I was struggling to understand what he was saying. No, I don't recommend hitting everything twice a week. I recommend a minimum of twice a week. All right, a minimum of twice a week. I think body parts can be hit up to 6 times a week, up to 6 days a week. I think body parts can be hit up to twice a day, 6 days a week. 2 is your minimum if you're drug-free. If you're on plenty of drugs, you can get away with 1, that's fine. Here's the problem we get into. I don't necessarily have a problem with you alternating if your exercise selection is low. The problem you have, particularly, again, someone who's drug-free, if you're doing too many different exercises, you're not getting enough volume in. Meaning, I'm going to say probably if you want to get really good at an exercise, you're trying to train the motor patterns. Now, obviously, things like the deadlift, isn't always true, but all your other big exercises, your bench press, your barbell row, your squat, if you are trying to improve at it, you need to do a lot of sets. I'm going to say a minimum of 7 to 8 sets a week on any exercise that you really want to improve at. So if you're coming in, and let's say you're going to flat bench Monday, and you're going to incline bench Thursday, that's fine, because again, you're talking about a hypertrophy of keeping elevated muscle protein synthesis. That's okay. But if you want to get good at these exercises, you need to get practice in. So how many sets are you doing of each one? Now, if you're coming in and you're doing like 6 or 7 or 8 sets of bench press, that'll be okay on Monday. If you're coming in and doing 3 to 5 sets of bench press, and then you're doing different chest exercises on different days like incline instead, don't complain when your bench press doesn't improve dramatically, because when it comes to overall strength, you have a couple different things going on. You have to remember strength is going to be a component of the motor unit learning, the neural efficiency, which requires you to do the exercise. And hypertrophy and strengthening of all the individual muscles. Now, the incline bench will carry over just fine. Incline bench will carry over just fine as far as the muscle hypertrophy goes to your flat bench. But if you're not getting enough practice in on an exercise, your neural efficiency isn't going to be high enough. You're not going to get the most overload possible. So the situation we get into, this is fine as long as the exercises you care about the most, you are getting enough volume in. And I'm going to say as a general rule, any exercise you really want to improve at, minimum of about 7 sets per week is what you need to do, which is why when you're coming in and squatting 3 times a week or benching 3 times a week, you can focus on it more because you don't have to do that many sets. You can get away with 3 or 4 sets. Now, by that same token, when you're powerlifting, I've done as many as 30 sets of bench, 30 sets of squats in a week. Then the off season is when I was powerlifting. But again, those are 3 to 5 rep sets. So again, different factors you could look at. From a hypertrophy perspective, though, this is fine. But keep in mind, your exercise diversity is covered already by you doing these different things. So you don't need to be coming in and doing 5 different chest exercises because you're only hitting your chest twice a week. That's not very much. You're not having a lot of opportunity to train the motor patterns to improve at these exercises. And it is progressive overload that is the primary determiner of if you grow or not. So if you're not getting sufficient overload because you're not getting strong enough, there's the problem. I mean, the method is fine. There's nothing wrong with this method, again, as long as volume is sufficient. Because you are hitting a couple different angles. There is something to be said for having at least 2 major exercises that work a basic body function. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it can keep injury rates a little bit lower. Not a problem with it. Again, just make sure that the primary exercise is your volume sufficient. All right, next question. For those people who want to deadlift frequently but have less than optimal anthropometry, longish torso, shortish arms, would you ever advise using a clean style deadlift and ollie shoes as opposed to a sumo variant? All right, what are we talking about for here? You want to deadlift at a high frequency? Well, what are we talking about here? You're talking about sumo. I don't recommend anyone ever sumo deadlift who's not going to compete in powerlifting with the sumo deadlift. I don't feel the sumo deadlift is as good of an overall strength or size builder as the conventional deadlift. It just isn't. So this shouldn't even be an option on the table. Now the thing you're talking about using the clean grip, did you call it the clean grip? Clean style deadlift. I think you mean the snatch grip deadlift is what you're talking about, which is a really wide grip. No, that just creates a deficit. For shorter arms, this isn't really going to be what I would recommend at all. I would recommend someone with short arms who wants to deadlift at a high frequency stick to normal conventional deadlifts. You're going to need to actually be careful of Olympic shoes. You're going to need to be careful of deficit deadlifts. And a lot of people who want to build overall size and strength, I recommend rotating in a lot of deficit deadlifts. I recommend training in boots. I recommend training standing on plates frequently so that they can have a longer range of motion. Your shorter arms is a potential problem with too many deficit deadlifts of strain on your lower back. So I'm going to say just do the normal conventional deadlift if you want to deadlift at a high frequency without over fatiguing your lower back. For someone with really short arms and a long torso. The reason you guys see me historically do a lot of deficit deadlifts and things to shorten the range of motion is because I have really long arms, and by doing the longer range of motion I can build more overall size and strength by having a longer range of motion, because I have a short range of motion naturally due to my long arms and short legs. So this is what we're talking about. You need to stick with just purely conventional deadlift and be leery of some of those variations. Deficits, even snatch grip deadlift, all of that. All right, next question. Jason, on a recomp, the refeed day can be only 1 day. Example, maintenance 3,000 calories, 6 days in a deficit. 2,500 calories, 500 calorie deficit. And on the 7th day, replenish the calories with 6,000 of high carb, low fat for 21,000 weekly total. Or there's a need in the surplus to be on the 2nd day. All right, look, he's saying that some people are out there saying that 2-day overfeeds or refeeds are better. You know what? I don't think you're going to see a difference. To be quite honest, for simplicity's sake, I would recommend you go with the first one. Only because what generally happens, in my experience, and this is just me, refeeding for a couple days in a row will put some people back into a binge eating cycle. All right, to overeat more than 500 calories or 1,000 calories over your maintenance for 2 days in a row, for some people, they can't turn that switch back off. I'm one of those people. So if you're an overeater, the 1-day refeed method for your recomposition is probably going to be the way to go. But people need to understand these refeeds done this way to do them correctly. It's like you said, very high carb, very, very low fat. Doesn't mean you take it all out cheat day. That's usually going to be your best bet if you're a chronic overeater. You know what? But some people will do fine on the 2-day one. Maybe they'll feel like they get better muscle glycogen replenishment. Maybe they feel like they get a better workout come Monday if they do it the whole weekend. And that's okay too, but just be aware of the effect it has on your appetite. And quite frankly, from a body composition perspective, I don't think you're going to see any difference. It really is tit for tat. I think what it's going to come down to is about appetite control and adherence for the individual and knowing yourself on that. But quite frankly, I don't think, purely from a body composition perspective, that one is better than the other. Body fat gain doesn't really seem to happen even on 2-day refeeds if they're timed and done correctly, at least all the data I've seen. Again, it's going to come down to personal preference and diet adherence. Nothing more, nothing less. All right, next question. If fuckarounditis has kept me in the gym for the past 4 years, is it really so bad as long as I work on progressing my big lifts? I'm not an athlete, just working out to gain some muscle and keep the fat off. Not bodybuilding either, thanks. Alright, for those who don't know what fuckarounditis is, this is what Martin Berkham talked about. I use this same term also. Fuckarounditis is people who come into the gym and they fuck around with tons of fluff and pump exercises and not really focus enough on the stuff that really works. And then they wonder why they make such slow gains. Fuckarounditis, you walk into the gym and you see guys who aren't squatting, they aren't deadlifting, they aren't doing overhead pressing, standing, they aren't doing barbell rows. But they're coming in and hitting 5 different isolation movements. They're doing lateral raises with a belt on, curls with a belt on. They do 4 different types of curls. They do all this stuff, then they wonder why their chest and shoulders and everything just aren't getting thicker, they aren't getting bigger. And sometimes these people have been in the gym a year or two and they barely look like they lift. It's called fuckarounditis because they're not coming in and actually putting in sufficient workloads. They're coming in doing little fluff exercises. And not realizing that that's not going to work. All the people who do tons of just fluff exercises are usually very genetically gifted bodybuilders on a ton of drugs who are still injecting oil into those muscles to bring them up further with fake muscle that they're doing all this isolation work in. The big heavy movements are what put most of the size on you. That's where your efficiency is. And a lot of people come in and do so much of the fluff and pump, it's what I call it, and Martin Berkham called it fuckarounditis, that they end up not gaining very much muscle. They get very, very slow gains and they tend to stagnate for months on end. Again, because they're putting so much focus on little detail muscles that could actually just be worked by doing, weighted chin-ups, barbell rows, push presses, deadlifts. Is it a problem? No. If it keeps you motivated to go to the gym, you enjoy doing it, it's probably fine. You're still progressing and focusing on the big lifts. You're just coming in and doing a lot of little fluff stuff too. That's okay. The only thing that I would point out to you, though, is about time efficiency. You're not like a serious lifter. You don't have serious goals. Keep in mind, you might be spending an extra 3 or 4 hours a week in the gym doing something that probably isn't doing very much. It's probably accounting for less than 5% of your goals. 5 to 10% of your progress might be coming from that extra 3 hours a week you're putting in the gym doing fluff and pump. And that's okay if your lifestyle allows for it. Just remember, when your life gets busy, this is when people fall off who do the fluff and pump. When their lifestyle gets busy, they have their first child, they have to start putting in overtime at work, finals come up in school. All right, they tend to just fall off completely because in their mind they think they've got to be in the gym for 5 or 6 or 10 hours a week lifting weights because they do all this fluff and pump. They do fuckarounditis. And so instead of going in and just doing the stuff that would actually keep them progressing, I mean, quite frankly, most people who aren't really serious lifters, you could spend less than 3 hours a week in the weight room and still make progress and grow. Your whole body can grow off that. Honestly, an hour and a half, it could be done. Again, 30 minutes 3 times a week. As long as you're focused will actually get you the same results, just as much muscle as a lot of guys who are in there 5 hours, 10 hours a week, who are doing all the fluff and pump stuff. So that's the way you got to look at it, is understand that's okay if it keeps you in. You know, that's okay. As long as you're progressing on the big lifts and you're doing this other stuff for fun, that's okay if it's keeping you motivated. Just keep in mind, don't get stuck in the mindset that you have to do all the fuckarounditis. You got to remember, it's just something you're doing for fun. It probably is minimally affecting your progress. So when your lifestyle gets busy, don't let your habit and need to do all the fluff and pump make you think that you have to cut out of the gym completely. You can still come in and just do your basics and skip all the fuckarounditis, and you won't see any difference at all. So just keep that in mind when your life gets stressful or busy and that starts to interfere with your motivation to go to the gym. Just remember, you don't have to do all the other stuff. As long as you understand you're doing it just for fun, it's going to be okay. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.